Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Formula One highlights of 2025. This is part 3 episode, lads. So in the first two, they're out already. So if you want to go back to the start, they're out already. And we've covered the first 7 races in the first episode, the second 7 in the second. We're now doing the next 3. And then we're going to finish it off with the final 4th episode next week. It's great fun, actually. And guys, it's been such a heavy life learning Formula One season. And call me corny, call me weird, call me crazy, or what the hell is he talking about? But there's a lot of things that you can take out of this year that you're probably going through in your own life, at your own work, or even a sporting career or something, where you've had Verstappen, the guy, coming from nowhere, then absolutely dominating, and then Oscar Piastri getting too lazy when he was ahead. Have you ever had that feeling in your life, where everything is just going so peachy that you just fall asleep at the wheel? Let's get into it.
Walsh running the Irish green, and look at the move he's making down to the inside.
Moves to the front, what a move from 5th all the way to the lead in lap 1.
Walsh takes win number 2.
Peter. Walsh. Okay, lads, so this is round 15 and in episode 3. So let's get right into it. It's Zandvoort up this time. And Zandvoort, we had Oscar Piastri took the win, Max Verstappen in second, and Hadjar in third. Fantastic result for Hadjar, by the way. But look, we're focusing on the 3 big boys, really, and a little bit of George Russell as we go through this highlights episode marathon, let's say. But Netherlands, Zandvoort, it was the weekend that wasn't supposed to matter. Now, what do I mean? Like, Zandvoort arrived dressed up as a homecoming, but everyone in the paddock knew that the truth, it wasn't nostalgia, it wasn't pressure. The orange smoke, all the DJs, I think, didn't we have Van Dijk, Oakenfold? I mean, all the head DJs of the world always come to Zandvoort. All of it screamed like a celebration, but underneath it sat an uncomfortable question this year. And this is what it really rocked up the world of Formula One. This is what we need. It needed to shake it by its balls here. And was this Max Verstappen's territory still? Or has the season quietly moved on without him? Because they were the real questions. Because for the first time in a long time here, lads, Red Bull didn't roll into a weekend, especially at Zandvoort, as the clear reference. McLaren were a lot sharper. The championship math was tightening at this stage. And the psychological edge here, lads, the invisible thing Max has lived off for years, suddenly felt very, very negotiable. And Zandvoort wasn't about points. It really was. This was about stamping your authority down. You look at the conflict going into the Dutch Grand Prix here. It was brutally simple. On one side, you've got Verstappen, the Red Bull king, the Zandvoort king, the guy who's been dominating for years, the reigning force, the under expectation so loud it almost bordered on suffocating to a degree. Now, Red Bull under scrutiny, not weak, but no longer untouchable. Then on the other hand, you had McLaren with Norris and Piastri, both doing well this year up and down so far, but no longer pretending they were the learning team, taking the cobwebs off. That was all done and dusted now at this stage. A team arriving with momentum, with confidence, and like just enough, would you say even arrogance? I don't know if that's the right word I choose, lads, but give me a bit of rope on this one. Maybe, let's just go with arrogance. Enough arrogance to believe that this might be the moment to break the Zandvoort spell and even really drop a sledgehammer on the championship against Verstappen. Because if you hit Verstappen at his own home turf here, that's one hell of a step. And Zandvoort, it is quite different to a lot of the Grand Prix. Zandvoort, it wouldn't be just another European circuit. Now, guys, you know that this was my home track when I was racing in Formula Ford. This was literally my home track. I mean, I'm an Irish guy, but yet Zandvoort being my home territory, well, yeah, because it was the place I used to do most miles I've ever done in my life. I used to live only 15 minutes away from Zandvoort, and we used to be there all the time. It does punish hesitation and it rewards commitment. It really does. And especially going through, well, I call it turn 3, but technically it's turn 4, that long sweeping left-hander where they all take the outside corner, or the outside line, which is the wrong line, by the way. But anyway, that's another day. But historically, this has been Verstappen's grandstand, his 9th symphony in front of all his fans. It is the place for him. A place where all the other races... a place where others race the track, and he was racing the moment, but 2025 already shown the cracks, and this is where it started to go, lads. Not failures, but just interruptions. And the question wasn't whether Max could win here. It was kind of like, did he still own the place? When we did get to the racing action, lads, even from just the opening sessions before the race, the tone was pretty much set at this stage. This was not going to be a runway for Verstappen. A runaway, not runway. McLaren, they were present, right? Ferrari, they flirted a little with relevance. Mercedes sort of hovered a bit, but Verstappen, quietly, fair enough, he didn't panic, because Verstappen knows that there's only so much pushing you can do in the car until you start overdriving the car, and then you actually start to go slower. So it's kind of like getting sucked into quicksand, and the more you fight, the more you go down quicker. So you have to almost accept your fate to a degree. That would probably be the best way I could describe how overdriving a car can just be suicide to you. And where others chase lap time, like Max chased positioning, because where others overcommitted, he left a bit of margin. And you can see that in him. Qualifying wasn't theatrical. It was controlled. And there was no fireworks per se. There was no statements really. It was a bit of precision. And in that itself, there was a message that you don't beat pressure by fighting it, but by absorbing it. Not in every situation, but there's something to think about there. And race day arrived with the atmosphere boiling, obviously, for Verstappen, but the real heat, it was inside the cockpit, lads. And then the race itself spoke. Bottom line, the scoreboard was starting to tell us the whole game. And when the lights went out, the Dutch Grand Prix, it revealed everything quite quick. It really did. It wasn't a chaotic scrap. It wasn't a dramatic collapse. There was quite a bit of execution here. Verstappen managed the start, okay, defended when needed, had to, and controlled the rhythm of the race in a way that reminded everyone why momentum can be very, very dangerous. But authority is lethal, and McLaren pushed, lads. They probed, they waited for mistakes that never came. And every lap that passed without an opening wound, without an opening, it wasn't neutral wounding, and it was corrosive, It was because chasing a driver who never cracks, well, a lot of the time anyway, is mentally exhausting. You stop racing the track, and you start racing the idea of the guy or girl. And by the final stint, the fight wasn't for the lead anymore. I think in many ways, it was kind of like acceptance. And Max didn't crush the field. He didn't need to. He just kind of outlasted them. Of course, Oscar Piastri went on to win the race and Verstappen didn't. But it didn't reset the championship on paper, but psychologically it slammed a door or slammed open a door. I'm not even sure which way I'd go with this one. This was the weekend that reminded everyone, especially McLaren, that Verstappen, he doesn't disappear when the pressure shifts. He tries to evolve, and Can we all relate to that? That something doesn't go our way, we've got to take a chance and change direction. We have to, including me, including all of us. Zandvoort, it wasn't a celebration of dominance. It wasn't. It was a warning shot. The season wasn't about who was the fastest anymore at this stage, lads. This is what really amped up the pressure, I think. It was about who could survive the long game. And as the circus packed up and moved, one thing was clear. You don't dethrone a champion by arriving confident. You do by breaking him. And at Zandvoort, he didn't break, but you could call the Red Bull team itself, including Verstappen, they rattled. On, lads, to the Italian Grand Prix. Well, Monza never lies in terms of engine speed, where your car is at this stage. Monza, it doesn't whisper, like it doesn't hint. It exposes that speed. And every year people talk about the history, the passion, the tifosi, all true, all romantic. It really is. It's just pure romance, the tifosi in Italy and Formula One. It's just beautiful, lads. But the real reason Monza is simpler is that there is nowhere to hide. Now, you could say that about a lot of tracks. But when it comes to engine speed, if you don't have that engine speed up, lads, it shows you up very, very quick. Even if you're losing 2 miles an hour, 1 mile an hour even, on the main straight. It shows up. And you get drowned completely. And long straights, strip cars down to fundamentals. Strategy is kind of naked. The drivers are sort of isolated a bit. And if you're not confident in what you brought, it'll humiliate you. And coming into Italy, the championship tension wasn't theoretical now at this stage. Zandvoort, it didn't settle anything. But McLaren were still coming. Ferrari were clearly desperate, and you wouldn't blame them. They were very desperate to win their home Grand Prix. And a Ferrari winning in Monza, it's insanity. It's through the roof. And Red Bull arrived knowing that this was not a circuit that flatters control. It demands assertion. Monza was about one thing. Who still had the right to dictate terms now? And the conflict, guys, the conflict in Italy wasn't chaotic. It was kind of political. One side Verstappen, starting from pole, with a Red Bull package designed for efficiency, not spectacle. A team laser focused on clean execution and zero drama because that's what they had to do. Then on the other hand, you had Norris and Piastri, both fast enough to win. Both really should have won this. But hungry enough to kind of risk it too. I gotta give him that. The whole team though, really. But a McLaren team balancing championship ambition, the unspoken question of who mattered now, and hovering behind it all, Ferrari at home, emotionally invested but strategically just limited, lads. Monza doesn't reward hope, it rewards speed and clarity. Monza is deceptive. It looks simple, doesn't it? Like, if I never raced a car, it would look easy to me. It's like watching the ovals in America. People go around this circle anti-clockwise, and that's it. But lads, I tell you now, they are incredibly technical. Even they say for racing on ovals, which I did, it's 80% setup and 20% driver. You've got G-force, 4 or 5G going against you every single corner, every single lap. You make one simple tiny error, you're in a concrete wall and you could be dead. So make no mistake about it. Yes, Monza's not a circle, as they call it, but it looks simple, right? Now, every mistake is amplified because the runoffs are very small, very narrow at this place. Every hesitation can cost you tenths because all those long straights, you screw up at one corner coming onto a main straight, that punishes and crucifies you all the way to the end of that straight, which can be 6 to 7 to 10 seconds after you've made your mistake. So it's no joke. And for Monza represents something a bit delicate, I think. Like, Verstappen didn't need a spectacular win Whether it was or not, or it was a boring win, just a win. Like the kind that suffocated the challengers without feeding their belief. And that's what they needed, especially after hitting home after Zandvoort. When the lights went out, Monza immediately delivered tension, lads. Verstappen, Norris, wheel to wheel almost instantly. A proper bit of an old school drag race down the start and finish straight, which was very cool. Norris was close enough to believe, close enough to risk, close enough to smell the blood to a degree. And then came the moment that defined the tone of the race. To avoid a potential penalty, Verstappen gave the position back early. Very calculated, which, well, you could argue maybe on that one isn't, well, duh, you don't want to screw your whole race. It wasn't desperation. It was patience weaponized. And strategically, Red Bull moved first, an earlier stop, clean air, no hesitation. McLaren reacted, but reaction is always weaker than intent. So from that point on, the race subtly shifted from contest to containment. Once Verstappen reclaimed the lead, the race changed character, right? It wasn't really drama. There's no lunges as such, no chaos, just a bit of distance. He managed the gap very, very well. He neutralized the undercut, which was great. He cruised when needed and pushed when required. And that's exactly what you need to do. Every lap felt like a quiet reminder that speed alone, it doesn't just win the championship. Authority can win the championship for you a lot of times. But behind him, the real drama was unfolding at McLaren. A slow pit stop for Norris allowed Piastri through. Then came the team order. Awkward, delayed, emotionally loaded. Piastri questioned it. Eventually, all right, he accepted defeat. And in that hesitation, something fractured. Not positions, but belief, I think, to a degree here. And Ferrari, they just sort of faded off quietly. Like the Tifosi once again watching hope dissolve was torture for them. But by the time the checkered flag came, Verstappen hadn't dominated Monza. He kind of tamed it. And the Italian Grand Prix didn't explode the championship. It gave Verstappen hope. Verstappen showed that even when challenged, even when pressured, even when briefly yielding, he kind of remained the axis everything rotated around. And McLaren learned something, I think, more uncomfortable. They weren't just fighting Red Bull. They were fighting them bloody selves. Monza exposed the difference between a team chasing a title and a team that already understands how to defend one. And that's bloody hard to come up against, lads. As the paddock packed up and headed east, you don't beat a champion by being faster for a lap. You have to break the rhythm. But Verstappen, he never lost it. Get to Azerbaijan, ladies and gentlemen. Which camera am I looking at? Sometimes I forget. I get lost in my moment. Am I looking at... sorry, guys. So, Azerbaijan, this was a trap. This was a trap. And this was Oscar Piastri's major downfall. This, guys, we should all, including me and everybody else in the world, sometimes it's not about going up, climbing the hill, because we all sort of think that when you need to fight for something that you need to keep going and go as hard and desperate, as aggressive as you can, right? You know what I mean? Like climbing Mount Everest. But actually for Oscar Piastri, he was leading the championship by 31 points and he fell asleep at the wheel and didn't finish the race. The guy did not buckle under pressure, so to speak, as in like, oh, well, he just got dominated by Verstappen and Lando Norris and look, oh yeah, he messed it all up. That was it. Yep, done. No, it was the other way around. He got so comfortable, he fell asleep at the wheel. Hasn't somebody out there listened to this? Haven't you been in that situation to a degree where we've just got everything handed to us and all of a sudden we just get a little lazy and then crash? Baku can be a mentally exhausting track for the drivers, lads. The straights, they tempt aggression. The castle section punishes it diabolically. And the rhythm never settles long enough for comfort. for a championship leader, it can be a bit of a nightmare. You're defending points, really, not chasing glory. Every overtake attempt probably feels like risk, which there is a lot at Baku. Every curb looks sharper than it should. I mean, Baku, that even sounds like a planet in Star Wars movie, you know what I mean? Like, it just sounds off the wall together here, out of this world. Piastri came into the weekend knowing one bad moment could undo weeks of control. Verstappen came in knowing that this was the exact kind of track where pressure can create mistakes. So he was hoping. And then Norris came in knowing that chaos doesn't care who it helps, only who survives it. The race itself, let's get right down to it. It barely any time to breathe. Lights out, go, catastrophe. Oscar Piastri, first of all, jumps the start. Activated anti-stall, dropped through the field, and before the race it even found shape, he was in the wall. And no strategy, no recovery, no second chance. That was the first mistake he made. He wouldn't have made that mistake if he was in the zone. Lads, he wouldn't. And yeah, drivers can make mistakes. But no, it's just the convenience now of him having the false start, number one, and the crash all in the same race. That ain't a coincidence, lads. That ain't a coincidence. And in a single moment, it detonated the title fight. It really did. From there, the race didn't explode. No, we're talking right here in this moment when Piastri goes into the wall, all right? And then Verstappen took control, calm, unchallenged, clinical. This was no longer about winning now. This was damage redistribution. Piastri did get very lucky here because Lando Norris should have either won or finished second at this race, or maybe even third. And he messed it up. Okay? This was a major cock-up because Piastri's now in the wall. And if he won the race, he'd only be 6 points behind Piastri, which would be nothing. Nothing. But they didn't. Now, can you blame him fully? Well, you can debate me on that one, and I don't mind that. I honestly don't mind. But this was a major, major muck-up by them two. I mean, Piastri fell asleep at the wheel, got lazy, relaxed, bang, made his mistake. Lando Norris literally had it handed to him, and they didn't do the job. They didn't do the job. And, you know, Verstappen hit clean air. The race was effectively sealed. No wheel-to-wheel theatrics, nothing. Norris, he fought a bit, he pushed a bit, but Baku doesn't hand out miracles, lads. And 7th place was the ceiling. 7th place? Give me a break. The end of the Baku race. If I was Lando Norris in that situation, lads, I would be killing myself if I was Lando Norris. I would be killing myself because I know how many points we would have left on that table. You don't get many chances like this. You just don't. And this is why a lot of us should not quit. Now, look, I get it. Sometimes we can make a mistake, and I'm including myself here. Touch wood for all of us. Sometimes we can make a mistake. Sometimes we're just not at the races, and that's okay too. But in that situation, you don't get many chances. You don't get many of those chances in real life as well. And you've got to be ready to go. So then we get to Singapore, lads. Then George Russell takes the win, Verstappen second, Norris in third. Talk about now the championship starting to heat up a bit here, lads. Singapore, it doesn't reward bravery, lads. It rewards discipline. This place, smoking humid. After the chaos of Baku, the championship arrived here. And Piastri just suffered his first real disaster this year. Norris back in contention to a degree. Verstappen was coming back. And then McLaren arrived knowing that this could be game on. Have a spanner in the works. Then you've got George Russell and the Mercedes looking unexpectedly strong, Red Bull were competitive but kind of cautious. Ferrari were a bit present but brittle. McLaren were kind of not walking on a tightrope at this stage. Piastri needed to stabilise his championship, had to do something here. Norris, he needed to keep the pressure alive. He absolutely had to do something. The team needed points here, not headlines. And Singapore is brutal. Every lap feels like twice as long. Every braking zone feels sharper. Every mistake echoes. There's no rhythm here to a degree. It's like repetition and just tiredness. And once your focus slips, the track can punish you like that. And it's all goddamn over. At the start, Russell took the control. Pole position, clean launch, clean getaway, clean air. From there, he never allowed the race to come to him. He kind of went to it, and behind him, the race began to sort of tighten up a bit. Verstappen, he sat in second. Norris pressed forward aggressively enough. Piastri sort of hovered close enough, but not enough to make a huge impact at this stage. And then, friction. Norris made contact with Verstappen. Later, he tangled with Piastri. Nothing drastic, but just enough. Enough to remind everyone that this McLaren pairing was combustible. And while the spotlight hovered over Norris and Piastri, McLaren were doing the math here. Third and fourth, but nothing spectacular. But okay, enough for now, I guess. As the last laps ticked down, Russell's win became inevitable, really. Verstappen, he held second. Norris, okay, he secured the third. Piastri coming home in fourth. But without fanfare, without fireworks, McLaren sealed the Constructors' Championship. No champagne-soaked drama, no last lap heroics. Just cold arithmetic, I think. Singapore didn't decide the Drivers' Championship, obviously. But it did something subtler. It was really now opening up those cracks that formed only a few races ago. And they were now starting to get very fragile. Piastri survived the weekend, but didn't do much. Norris scored, yeah, but created a little bit of pressure again. Verstappen stayed alive, but didn't strike. McLaren learned the hardest lesson of all. Winning together is easy. Winning together can be easy, but fighting together can be devastating and huge damage. But Singapore closed the chapter on uncertainty, I think, for the team title, but opened something far more dangerous. A driver battle with no margin for error at this stage. Lads, and Austin, after Singapore, the paddock was kind of buzzing with one dangerous idea, that Verstappen was kind of slowly being boxed out of his own championship. Austin doesn't tolerate that kind of thinking. Now, at the same time, you could say that he was holding on. There was a chance that Verstappen can be back. So this was kind of going 50-50, and I gotta admit, I was jumping on the bandwagon and getting excited here that, oh my god, could Verstappen be back in this championship? And that's what we loved. And Lando Norris was sort of riding a little bit of momentum now, chasing the championship. Oscar Piastri trying to protect it, but then Max Verstappen refusing to fade politely into the background, lads. From pole position, Verstappen controlled the race. Controlled it on the very first lap. And no major dramas, no hesitations at turn one, just a sort of immediate sort of separation, really. And behind him, Norris and Leclerc locked into a fierce wheel-to-wheel, lap after lap, neither willing to concede. Norris eventually forced his way past, but it wasn't clean or easy, lads. It cost tyres, and it cost time. Now, Hamilton's race unravelled with a puncture, turning a potential podium fight into damage limitation. And, oh, I'm sorry, lads, did I give you the results for this one here? So in America, Verstappen took the win, Norris second, and Leclerc third. And as the laps ticked down, like, Verstappen's lead wasn't flashy. It was kind of inevitable. And there was no late race twists, no safety car, no chaos, just kind of control. And Verstappen crossed the line to take what was his fifth victory at this stage, I think fifth. Reminding everyone that the championships are not handed over because momentum looks pretty on paper. Okay, Norris secured, okay, he secured the second position. Ferrari settling for the third, but quietly the numbers started to shift again, and quietly we're all starting to get a bit, what the hell is going on? Austin didn't decide the championship, but it was starting to form it back. It was starting to reshape it back now, because Verstappen pulled himself back into the conversation, really did this time now. Because before America, it was 50-50, but now people were like, whoa, 80%, 85%. Oh my God, Max Verstappen's coming on. Like, the title fight now had 3 edges, not 2, and that's kind of dangerous, because when momentum fragments, no one can feel safe. As the circus moved from there to Mexico now, the paddock understood something fundamental at this stage. The season wasn't slipping away from Verstappen. It was becoming complicated. Mexico doesn't look very fast. It feels a bit strange, it looks. The altitude steals power, warps braking zones, and makes the cars behave like they're running on half-truths. Like, drivers talk about it as if the laws of physics are optional here. I mean, it's a weird track because it's just so high up. But because when the rules feel bent, the mentally strongest drivers can straighten them again in a way. But Mexico arrived with the championship compressed to, I think, to kind of a breaking point here, where any one of the 3 now, if they picked up momentum from here, and especially for Verstappen, the fact that he was starting to come back into the conversation now, all he needed to do was 1 or 2 bits of momentum and, oh dear Lord, the guys would fall like a house of cards. Arrived at Mexico as the leader of the championship, but the grip, well, we saw at this stage that it was weakening. Lando Norris arrived with momentum, a bit of belief, half aggressiveness, I'll give him that. Max Verstappen arrived close enough to smell it now, but he needed a bit of chaos at this stage. And Mexico is one of those tracks where it punishes indecision. Low downforce, you have to really. Long braking zones, thin air that exaggerate mistakes, and a crowd that amplifies pressure instead of softening it with their love for Perez there. And you don't manage Mexico, you have to command it as much as you can. Now for Norris, this wasn't just another round. This was a chance to flip the story that had followed him for years. Fast, talented, emotional, but never the guy who takes the crown by force. But for Piastri, it was about defense, not blinking, and about absorbing the pressure without reacting to it. And sometimes, lads, you know, we can all get into a stage in our life that we're not gaining ground, but we've got to hold on for dear life to just protect what we have in this moment of time. Went out, lads. The tone was pretty much unmistakable. Norris launched cleanly from pole, immediately began. Did I just forget to call out the results to you again, lads? I'm sorry. 2 in a row. Norris wins it, Leclerc second and Verstappen third. So let's see how it played out. But behind Norris, chaos kind of brewed. Leclerc and Verstappen, they went wheel to wheel in a brutal scrap that consumed time and tyres. And Piastri hovered in the background. He was unable to insert himself into the fight really. Quick enough to stay relevant-ish, not sharp enough to dominate. And as the race settled, the gap told the story better than the commentary ever could. Norris wasn't just leading, he was disappearing now. The real fight was kind of raw and unforgiving, lads. Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen went at each other like 2 men. Both understood exactly what this moment meant, but Verstappen threw everything at it, late braking, etc. But Leclerc, he held firm, less than a second. Ferrari kept Red Bull behind, and Oscar Piastri, man, he was nowhere near it. 5th place, okay, fine. But this is what makes this devastating for any guy that's been leading the championship. Because championships aren't lost when you crash all the time. They're lost when someone else steps forward and you don't have an answer. Now, it can obviously be over if you have a crash too. Don't get me wrong. But now, Lando Norris is leading the championship by a bloody point. For the first time now all year, Norris was not chasing, Piastri wasn't defending comfortably, Verstappen wasn't the central threat, just a looming threat. But this was the race where Norris stopped being the guy with momentum and became the guy everyone now had to beat. And psychologically, that can be a big shift. But now Piastri didn't collapse. He didn't make errors per se. He's just been beaten so that the silence said more than any radio message ever could. And as the paddock packed up for Brazil now, one truth hung heavy in the air now. The championship wasn't slipping anymore. It changed hands. Guys, have you been in the scenario of this stage? You're 31 points ahead. Piastri was. That's a race plus 6 more points. Comfortably. And you're still winning the championship. Or you're defending the championship at that stage. That's a big gap. This doesn't happen very much. And now it's just completely changed. And we're going to finish today's episode with the last one. Brazil, lads. Brazil, Interlagos. It doesn't build drama slowly. It drops you right into the deep end, lads. The conflict in Brazil, it was very clear. Norris just took the lead of the championship. Now we had to hold it. Piastri was close enough to punish a small error, no doubt about it, and take the championship back, or the championship lead back. Verstappen, he needs chaos at this stage. Weather, safety car, the two lads knocking each other off. Interlagos doesn't allow comfort, and that's the beautiful thing for Verstappen here, right? And if you try to protect something here, it can take it away from you. So the question heading into Sunday, who wasn't fastest, is who could survive being hunted? Brazil compresses everything here. The lap is short. Mistakes can repeat quickly. Traffic arrives very fast and continuously. And strategy windows are narrow. And when rain can threaten here, which it does pretty much every year, this is where championships can tilt. It really can. Because pressure here doesn't arrive gradually. It hits all at once. And because it is a chaotic track. For Norris, this is unfamiliar territory, clearly. For Piastri, this was opportunity territory because now the pressure's off him. The pressure's off him. He'd be devastated he lost the lead. But now he's got nothing to lose. And from the start, the race felt unstable. The conditions were uncertain. Strategy calls were a bit intense. No one wants to commit too early. And up front, the pace was relentless, really. Verstappen pushed early. And let me give you the results of Brazil, lads. Norris took the win. Antonelli in second and Verstappen in third. This wasn't the Norris of Mexico disappearing into the distance. This was Norris absorbing pressure. But every lap, the gap compressed. Every sector, the timing screens flickered with a lot of threat. Interlagos was doing what it always does, forcing drivers to drive the moment and not the plan. There was no massive crash. There was no single defining overtake. Brazil delivered something a little crueler, sustained pressure, and lap after lap, Norris held. He didn't dominate. He didn't escape. He just endured. And when the checkered flag finally fell, the results mattered. Look, they do. But not as much as how it happened. The new championship leader has survived his first true test. But Brazil didn't decide the championship, but it confirmed something. Norris didn't just take the lead. He proved he could carry it for now. Now, the massive pressure isn't on him at this stage, but Piastri left Sao Paulo knowing he was still close, dangerously close, but also knowing that Norris didn't blink. And Verstappen left knowing the window was narrowing, but not closed. And the season left Brazil transformed. The fight was no longer theoretical now. No longer about potential. No longer about who might. It was about who could last. And this is what we're really loving here, lads. And as the paddock moved on, one truth's coming up, lads. The championship is now entering its final phase. And nobody, not Norris, not Piastri, not Verstappen, was leaving it unscarred. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to leave it right there today. And this day next week, we'll be back with the final few races. And the lessons that come out of this, and the lessons that, here's the key, the lessons that what we should take out of championships like this. Even if you're not a massive Formula 1 fan and you're deciding to give this whole 4-episode thing a crack and see what this Peter Welch guy is all about, you know, guys, and if you're saying, nah, I don't like him, not a problem. Totally respect it. If you don't like me, you don't like me. If you do, great, love you, lads. But look, even if you don't like me or you're just not interested, no problem. Just hope everybody can take something out of this. Oscar Piastri, 31 points in the lead. And the guy's now chasing the championship only a few races after. Do you realize how much of a mental shift? Do you realize how on the ball we can't give up? And including me, we all get to this stage where hope is gone. You don't know where else to go. You're exhausted. And then all of a sudden, one lucky throw of the dice. Now, we haven't finished the championship yet. And we will next week, and we'll get into all this next week, lads. Okay. Thanks for watching, lads. Are listening. Speak to you next week.
Walsh running the Irish green, and look at the move. He's making down to the inside.
Moves to the front. What a move from 5th all the way to the lead in lap 1.
Walsh takes win number 2.
Peter Walsh.